Lacrosse Legends. Lacrosse Legends, a comprehensive look at America's greatest game, featuring legends past, present, and future. Today on Lacrosse Legends, we speak with Rutgers University legend, Coach Tom Hayes.
There's no more perfectly named prize than the Vince Lombardi Trophy.
When you think of football, you think of the Super Bowl and the Vince Lombardi Trophy. Vince Lombardi, one of the greatest coaches in NFL history.
What the hell's going on out here?
Coach Tom Hayes. This man has been referred to as the Vince Lombardi of lacrosse coaches. His lacrosse journey started at Sewanhaka High School on Long Island. After Sewanhaka, Coach Hayes attended Penn State University. From there, he coached at Drexel University, Rutgers University, Team USA, and the International Lacrosse Federation. We visited Coach Hayes at his home in Pennsylvania. Our first topic of conversation, Mr. James D. Ford.
A very pleasant subject for me. Back in the mid-70s, I got word of this young man on Long Island that was tearing up, not only in lacrosse, but football and basketball. He was a natural leader. And his coach, Al Huddish, who I had known from various lacrosse events, gave him a high recommendation. Got to see James play. I knew he would fit into our program. Just so happened that year, there were two other fellows on Long Island that we were after. So we figured, geez, if we can get all three of these guys, we don't have to recruit any attack kids for the next 4 years. All you have to do is look at the Rutgers records for assists and goals, and you'll see those names: Tommy Sweeney, James Ford, Bobby Olson. I was a very fortunate coach to get all three of them. It was one of my first recruiting classes, and they basically made an impact on our program.
Kindly please set the record straight and tell us about Sewanhaka High School.
Lacrosse started way before that era. There was a team, a club team in Brooklyn called the Crescent Club. Former college players who were working in New York City got together and they formed a club team. And then it was expanded to a couple of high schools. Manhasset High School was one of the first ones, Garden City, and then Sewanhaka came into the group as well. 1947, Sewanhaka hired a young man from Syracuse University named Bill Rich, and he basically broke all records that were made for wins and losses on Long Island. At one point, the team had won 91 games in a row, 10 straight Long Island championships, and a lot of the games that they played were against college freshman teams, prep school teams, and as a result of their success, the game got a lot more exposure and through the Long Island press and Newsday, and even some TV exposure. The people that played in that era, in the 50s, 40s, and 50s, when Sewanhaka was going into this winning streak, were very fortunate to get the exposure. It helped the game grow on Long Island, and it's very enjoyable to see all the schools that are playing there now. Schools such as Sewanhaka, Mineola, Freeport, Garden City, were sort of the ones that sort of got things moving out on Long Island, continued on to where Long Island now is considered the hotbed of scholastic lacrosse.
You're an icon. You've been referred to as the Vince Lombardi of coaches for lacrosse. You must know you've influenced a lot of young men's lives.
Well, thank you for that. One of the things that not only myself, but anybody who played for Bill Rich at Sewanhaka, his parting words to us always was, you're going to get a lot out of this sport, be sure to put something back. And I think if you talk to any player who came through the program that was headed up by Bill Rich. I think you'll get that response from them as well. It's opened a lot of doors for a lot of people. The Sewanaka way was to be humble, to spread the game. We're sort of like a bunch of Johnny Appleseeds trying to get other people to play the sport. And we know it's such a great sport. And I always use the term, the stick is magic. And if you can get the stick in young boys' hands, the rest sort of takes care of itself. There are a lot of former Long Island people that are doing development throughout the world, throughout the United States. And from that tree that Bill Rich established, there are many, many coaches on that tree, and they're the ones that have made a big difference as far as the growth of the game. If you like.
Lacrosse Legends had a surprise for Coach Hayes. Mr. James D. Ford.
You said you get the door full? Yeah. He's like, I said, this is your doorbell ring. You want me to get it? He goes, if you like. He's downstairs. And you take your shoes off.
UPS?
No, someone else.
Who was it?
Down here, sir. Check it on the gas line. Coach!
What are you doing here? You came all the way?
Yes, yes.
Oh, James, come
Yes.
here. I love you.
Yes, yes.
Oh, man.
How you doing?
Oh, geez. We know we would have had lunch and went a little. Well, maybe we'll go down there in a little while and have a drink or something. After we're done. What do you think?
How you doing, Coach?
Great.
Good, good. You're looking good.
I just talked about you.
Oh,
You know?
that must have been quick.
Oh, that was a hard one. I went out with this girl last weekend.
Uh-huh.
She says to me, and I knew her from Penn State, right? Gina, she said, you were a lot more passionate when you were in college than you are now. I said, what the hell does that mean? I said, I'm passionate about a lot of things. She said, name one. I said, lacrosse.
Next on Lacrosse Legends. You're watching Lacrosse Legends.
There's going to be a procedure call. And right in front of Tom Hayes, there's a discussion about Tom Hayes. A little upset.
And we've got an early timeout taken by Tom Hayes. He's going to carry on his beef with the head officials. He doesn't understand this call. No score in the game. We're only a minute and a half in, and Tom Hayes taking a timeout to talk with Terry Cullen.
Yeah, that's Terry Cullen, and he's talking to him.
He's beefing.
Yeah, that's a good term for it.
Not a happy man is Tom Hayes.
You're the winningest coach in Rutgers University history. I think it's 194 total. You've got countless All-Americans. I think you had 22 All-Americans you coached. What is the key?
52.
Oh, I'm sorry, 52. What is the key to longevity and success?
Good players. The key in recruiting is not to get caught up in just, numbers and statistics. You got to know something about the individual, because they're going to be with you for 4 years, and as you can see, for the rest of their lives as well. Unlike some other sports, we're a very together type sport where we maintain our friendships over the years. Lacrosse brings that to the sport, and it's been passed on by lacrosse players as well. I hate to use the word, it's like a fraternity, but a lot of people have used that. I know myself, and I'm sure other people, like we're walking through a airline terminal and you see somebody with a lacrosse stick or something that says lacrosse on their t-shirt. There's a tendency to say hello to that person and strike up a friendship or just a conversation. I don't know how many other sports do that, but it definitely happens in lacrosse.
As the game has evolved, has coaching the student athlete changed?
I think that the players come more prepared now than previously, that because they're getting better coaching at the high school level. Also, a lot of them go to camps or they go to specialty camps for their positions. So a lot of them, fundamental-wise, technique-wise, are a little bit further ahead than, say, players that we had 10, 15 years ago. So there's a lot more teaching that went on then than that goes on now. Now, most of the kids can catch and throw with good technique. Their shooting is better. The goalies are better prepared for the college game. So I think that's all part of the evolution of the game. The more the game is being played, with more people playing it, then certain things that before you had to look at as far as we have to work on this or that. You know, most coaches can start off at a higher level now, especially at the major college level.
To the person who's never coached before, who sees this and aspires to be a coach, says, I want to try this. What advice can you give them?
Well, you've got to get involved with the sport itself, whether it's in the development of the sport, volunteering to work at camps where kids are coming in at a young age of 7. You learn how to coach by doing coaching. There are books out there that have been written, and you can pick up certain things from them. But the bottom line with any particular job, you got to do the job first before you become proficient in the job. And there is a trial and error period. I know my first coaching position was at Drexel University. And all of a sudden I go from being coaching midfielders to having to do everything. And if you're not prepared for that, it becomes a trial and error type situation. The players pretty much can tell whether you know whether you're talking about or not. So the key is always to be prepared. And if you can't do something, don't demonstrate. That's when you start using films or handing out bulletins and things of nature where kids can read up on stuff. So fortunately, most of the guys that go into coaching have played the game and they understand the techniques of the game, and they have a leg up on people that have never played the game. And we have that in the sport because the sport now is growing. And there's so many kids playing that a lot of times you have to use people, whether it be fathers or friends or what have you, as coaches to get kids going.
Next on Lacrosse Legends. You're watching Lacrosse Legends.
Rutgers controls Olsen to Ford, goal! And Ford has the hat trick. And we're still in the first quarter of play.
Dean Ford spoke very highly of you, sir. He said that one of the main reasons he asked you as an African-American player going to Rutgers, what did he expect? And you gave him a very truthful answer. If you come here, you're going to get an opportunity just like everyone else. And that's all he needed was the opportunity.
Spoke to several coaches and got the best answer from Coach Hayes and felt very comfortable with him when I went to visit the school. And he was honest. And I asked him about being a black player playing at Rutgers, and he gave me a solid answer, and he said, if you come here, you're going to have the same opportunity as any player. And that's all I wanted, to have an opportunity. If I was given a fair opportunity, I knew the rest would be history.
Rutgers since then has had a lot of other great African-American players. In your opinion, what seems to be the holdup with all these other colleges getting with the program?
First of all, as a coach, no matter what the sport is, you have to be colorblind. You have to look at what kind of a person he is. Is he going to be able to be coachable? is he going to be, and this is a team sport, okay? And in James' situation, that's why he has all our records as assists. That's a team aspect of the sport. He knew that. He was able to execute that. He made his team better because of that. I also looked at James as one of our leaders, okay? I had no ratios or anything like that. The other players that we brought in that were African Americans looked up to James. Sometimes James had to force them because he already had that as part of his makeup, that he was a team player, that he believed in the program. When you get players from different backgrounds, you know, for them to be able to change the way they operate so that it's basically directed at team play, that's going to make the team better.
That was again about the World Game and how it started with four guys sitting at a table in a discussion.
There was no plan in place, number one. When we were invited to Melbourne, Australia in 1974 to be part of a celebration of the 100 years of Australian lacrosse, there was never any thought of, okay, now we're going to, start an international organization. We had a luncheon between the four members that were there, and we were having such a great experience being in Australia, meeting Australians, meeting the players from the other countries that were there, that we said, geez, it would be great if we could do this every 4 years. And that's when we decided, well, there's nothing stopping us. So we put together a plan that we would have the event every 4 years. It would rotate from country to country. I opened my big mouth basically and said the U.S. would be the next host. I had no authority to do that. Fortunately, the representative from England said, oh, England would like to do it. And I said, okay, Nigel, you guys got it. And then after the meeting was over, he says to me, Coach, I was just being nice. I says, well, thanks for getting me off the hook. Anyway, we realized, though, that because the night before the opening games, we hadn't agreed on any rules. We didn't know what rules we were going to play on. Because England was playing by a different set of rules, where they only had 12 players on a team. Okay, there's no checking of the gloves. Australia was playing similarly. They had 15 players on the team. We brought 28 players with us from the U.S. The Canadians wanted to play with their wooden sticks. Nobody wanted to let them play with those. So we took a timeout from the meeting. We went into the hallways and we basically negotiated. You get this, you can use this. And we came up with a set of rules, at least for the next games. And then in between, the period of time between 74 and 78, we met in England, the four countries, and we started talking about having an international organization, when we would have meetings, the rules that we were going to play by, awards that we would give out, set up a tournament structure, which was a little different than what we did in Australia. So it was an evolution of how things were going to work. And eventually, as you know, we went from those four countries to we have almost 80 countries playing. We've been recognized by the International Olympic Committee. We're hoping to have lacrosse in the 28 Olympics in Los Angeles. And right now, with what's going on in the world with this virus and everything, we were supposed to have an event this summer with our under-19 teams in Ireland. We've had to postpone that. Also, we are supposed to have an International Olympic event in Birmingham, Alabama, with teams that are being considered for the 28 Olympics. We've had to postpone that. So right now things are on hold, but we're all very hopeful that this situation the world is going through right now will end.
Next on Lacrosse Legends. You're watching Lacrosse Legends.
Turn around on White, and in comes Stats with a shot, and he scores!
Doing it. Shot taken by O'Shea. Again, Saran comes up for Syracuse. There's a goal.
Brad now, number 22, goes to the left-handed shot.
We spoke earlier about this. The popularity of the youth lacrosse. Then you go into high school, it's very popular. You go into college, it's unbelievably popular, especially in the spring. On the professional level, the interest or the fan participation drops.
Right now, it's sort of an experiment that they're trying to find the best way to do. We've had club teams in the past, and they had a certain degree of success. And then they started a league with teams in the various parts of the country. There was some growing pains with that, and then we've had some individuals who've come up with a different concept now, a professional league, and we're able to get financial backing for it. It's a lot easier financially for the players now. They're being paid better salaries, expenses are being met. This whole virus situation has put a damper on that particular event as well. I don't know if they're going to be able to make it through this or not. But it's always been an issue with lacrosse in that what is after college? These kids that are playing college ball, their playing experience ends when they're 23 years old. Yet they still have many years of athletic abilities in them. No one has come up with the real solution for that. We've tried a lot of different things. This professional league may be the answer. I think once they get underway, I understand they're going to have playoffs starting in a few weeks. They've got a TV exposure. When I look at the games, I don't see a lot of people at the games. So I think it's still an experiment.
Field lacrosse or box lacrosse?
Well, I guess it would depend upon which country you come from. Box lacrosse is the game in Canada, primarily an offensive game. That's why you find the Canadians are such great offensive players, because they grow up shooting at a 4x4, whereas our players grow up shooting at a 6x6. It's a lot tougher to make goals in a 4x4 than it is a 6x6. They have developed a lot of outstanding offensive players. I like to look at it as a coach and say that the Canadian players, they don't look at the goalie when they shoot, they look at the open net. Whereas the North American players are trying to throw the ball through the goalie, and everything is the speed of the shot as opposed to the placement. And if you watch college teams that have, say, 5 or 6 Canadian players, most of their goals come from right inside the crease area, not from 20 yards out. Whereas if you see a lot of our American players, they're taking shots from the not the restraining line, but 15 yards, 20 yards area, which is a lot easier for the goalies to see and stop. Both games have a lot to offer. As a coach, you would want to have a few Canadian players with those abilities, but you also want to look to have some players that can play the whole field, because the field is still as long as it was, whereas in box lacrosse, you're basically playing on an ice hockey rink. So there's not as much running involved as you have on the outside game.
You mentioned before about the present situation with the virus and everything. How do you keep a player motivated through adversity?
I think the sport itself motivates players. I think we have enough players who, with college experience and have educations as well, that they I'm sure realize this hopefully is a temporary situation. And we as a sport have to try to handle it as best as possible and try to assist in what's happening in North America and the other countries that are playing this sport. And if this is what has to be done as far as face masks and doing the right things in order for this thing to be solved, then the lacrosse people have to be involved in the solution as well, and not just say, gee, let's wait until they get it taken care of. So I feel that we as a sport have to assist in the solution for this, and if that means following the dictates of your country and what they are asking you to do, we have to do it, because we don't have any experience of what else to do.
What is Coach Tom Hayes' future in lacrosse?
Well, I'm going to tell you something that I told somebody. When you spend 40 years trying to have something done, and my main goal was to, because I'm sure everybody in the sport has been asked this, why isn't lacrosse in the Olympics? And I have been working on that for a long time. The first thing that we had to do is find out, what do you have to do to get in the Olympics? And it's hard for people to realize this, but nobody had ever found out what you had to do. We talked about it, but nobody actually went to the IOC and say, what do we have to do to be part of the Olympics? Well, we did that. Our group did it. We found out. One of is you've got to develop the sport more. Number two, you have to join a lot of international organizations. You have to show that your sport has a doping policy. All these things we hadn't really done before. So we finally got it all done, put in our submission. It was voted on in Tokyo last November, and we were admitted and recognized by the IOC. So I got the phone call from the president of the U.S. Lacrosse, Steve Stenerson, and I said to him, Steve, so we're going to be invited for the 28 Olympics in the Coliseum? He said, that's what it looks that way. I said, well, I have one request. He said, what's that? I would like to have a suite in the Coliseum and make sure there is a wheelchair there and some oxygen. And I'll show up.
Next on Lacrosse Legends. You're watching Lacrosse Legends.
You mentioned before you had broken your leg and you were coaching from a golf cart.
Right. We don't coach with your legs, you coach with your brain. And obviously it's going to be tough to demonstrate from a golf cart.
Playing hurt.
Oh, anybody can play when they're healthy. I use that a lot with my players. They come limping out of the locker room. What's the matter with you? Oh, coach, my leg hurts. This is a first team All-American, right? I said, yeah? How'd that happen? He says, I don't know. I says, well, you're going to practice? I don't know, coach. I says, well, anybody can play when they're healthy.
I think that's great.
Suck it up. The stick is magic. I feel that once you get a stick in a kid's hands, it's amazing how they all of a sudden become lacrosse players. And they love the sport. And even here, okay, where I live, during the summer months and in the spring, we have about now 5 or 6 kids who play lacrosse at the various high schools. And they're out in the middle of the road here, throwing a ball around. You think you're on Long Island, And when I came up here in 2000, when I retired, there was no lacrosse here, none at all. And there's so many regions in this country and throughout the world where there isn't lacrosse. And if you can get sticks to those people and then do some clinics for them, and we have this all in place now through our development programs, the sport catches on. And once it catches on, then it's just a matter of developing the people there to help coach it and keep it going. You think about it, we have over 80 countries playing now, right? Not one of them has fallen off and said, we're not playing anymore. Not one. I mean, that's pretty good. And even in this area here, we have 18 high schools playing now, where we had none. 7 years ago, we had none. And it's just a matter of, and I don't have to preach to the choir here. Jimmy knows what I'm talking about. The sport will promote itself, given that the kids get the sticks in their hand and get a chance to get out there and play.
That is great. You mentioned that game Rutgers played Princeton back in 1980, and then you said there was only about 8 high schools that played lacrosse?
In New Jersey,
New Jersey. And how many are there now?
250.
To your point.
Yeah.
Coach Hayes, I can't thank you enough for this.
This is what I do.
You're an ambassador to the game. What you've done for this game, I can't believe that you've changed a lot of people's lives. I told you before James got here, I told you how he spoke of you. I told you how what John Moore thinks of you.
I haven't seen John in a long time.
That's a big reason I went to Rutgers, because James was there. Some other schools recruited me, Hobart and National College. But once I went over to Rutgers and saw that that's a really great program, and I'm like, yes, I want to go there. And James was there. Right. And Coach Hayes was, a really great guy, so I got along with him really well.
I ought to contact him. I might need him in a few years.
Oh, don't say that. But then again, we'll all need John in a few years.
Yeah. Hello? Come on. Hello? Yeah, okay. How am I what? I'm doing good, actually. I'm on television right now. Yeah, I'm being interviewed. That's okay. It's only going to be broadcast in Yugoslavia. No.
The criteria for the Hall of Fame, does it normally take this long for somebody to be recognized? Or sometimes you could walk out of college and damn, you're in the Hall of Fame. Some people have to wait 20 years.
What happened at Rutgers is we had a turnover of athletic directors, 3 different ones in 3 different years. So there was no follow-up on a lot of the events that they sponsor, and one of them was the Hall of Fame. So James, a couple other guys should have been inducted 5-6 years ago. So we have a backlog of players, and there's still another 6 players that I coached that I think are deserving, and I think James would echo that as well, like Billy Nislansky, Dave DeShirio, Eddie Trabolsi. These were all great players for us in the same category. I'm not on that committee, but fortunately we have one of our former players is on it now, and he's been very vocal about the lacrosse team, because our team is has been leaders on the athletic front. There's been continuity and consistency with that, and our kids graduate, and a lot of them are very successful in their own professions. We have a new athletic director now as well, and he's doing a better job. We'll still be having players inducted over the next 10 years, I think, and then after that it would be the coaches that have come after me would have to submit names for that. And there's a couple of the older guys too. Like I just got a note from a former player who thinks that a teammate of his has been overlooked. I have to tell our guy that's on the committee about that as well. And this was a guy who was played before I got there.
Coach, once again, thank you for everything.
Well, one of the things I did, and I didn't have to do it with James's teams because they never had problems. But as I got older as a coach, and certain players just don't get it, and I didn't want to embarrass them though, in front of their families and stuff. And if they screwed up, I wanted to let them know they screwed up. So they'd come to the sideline, I put my arm around them, and I would go, "That was the stupidest thing I've ever seen on a lacrosse field. Are you kidding me? Do you want to sit on the bench the rest of the game? Now get out there and give us a good game." And the parents would say, "Oh, isn't Coach Hayes being nice?" But, you do that a couple of times and the kids, he's not going to say anything. He's going to just, tell us to do this or do that. But I made up for it by yelling at the referees. Should I tell him the story? But you have to agree that this doesn't go any further than here. Cut.
I firmly believe that a person's character is measured by the amount of people they've positively affected. Coach Tom Hayes has inspired a great number of people. Lacrosse is a spiritual game. Coach Hayes reinforced it by telling me, and I quote, "You take from the game of lacrosse, you should give back. And when you give back, you will be rewarded exponentially." Although there's no exact number of how many people Coach Hayes has influenced, one thing is for certain. You could add one more name to that list.
Is it all right?
All is right.
On behalf of Seth Canner and Bernard Williams, this is Monsanto Muzak for Lacrosse Legends.